Over the weekend, Florida's Republican Senator Rick Scott decided to go on Fox News to rail against the Democratic Party and their reckless spending habits, which, as we all know, are just totally out of control, right? Well, that's what Rick Scott wanted to say, and actually Rick Scott did get the opportunity to say that. But unfortunately for Rick, Fox News host Bret Baier just wasn't having any of it. And here is what Bret Baier had to say. Senator, you're talking a lot about the deficit and debt, other Republicans are, but it wasn't that way under the Trump administration. In fact, if you look at the numbers, the debt went up at the end of 2020, $26.9 trillion. The Trump administration and Republicans added $6.7 trillion to the debt. That was since former President Barack Obama's last budget, a 33% increase. I understand COVID had a big role in that, but that's not a great track record of Republicans recently to tout themselves as deficit debt hawks and now doing so here. So in other words, Rick Scott goes on Fox News, thinks he's got a friendly venue, says, oh boy, I get to spread this typical, usual, idiotic Republican talking point about Democrats just being the spend-happy party. And Bret Baier says, well, hold up, dude. Y'all just did that for 4 years. You didn't care about the debt and the deficit. You raised it by 33%. And now suddenly you care about it when we're actually about to get something that's going to help the American public, the infrastructure package? Because that's what they were talking about. And Rick Scott said he couldn't support it because it's over $1 trillion and how are we going to pay for it and yada, yada, yada. Here's the sad truth Republicans have to understand about that infrastructure package. We had the funding mechanisms in place. Y'all took them out because you didn't want to raise taxes on your precious little donors, your millionaires, your billionaires, your corporations. And actually, had we done that, we would have also reduced the deficit, by not giving them the tax cuts that dramatically increased the deficit. And we could have paid for the infrastructure bill while we were at it. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Not to mention the fact that, okay, even if we don't do that, even if we have to foot the bill up front and pay for these projects as we go, yeah, that's going to add to the debt. But you know what it's going to do a couple years down the road once we have more people working these jobs to create this infrastructure? We're going to generate more tax revenue. Because after all, it's not just an infrastructure bill. More importantly, it is a job-creating bill. Creating more jobs increases economic activity. Increased economic activity leads to more taxes and revenue coming into the federal government. The plan might end up paying for itself in a short amount of time, may take a little bit longer, but overall the government's going to get a lot of their money back, and they're going to get a lot of it back pretty quickly by giving people good paying jobs through the infrastructure package. Second most important thing, and I'm glad Bret Baier pointed this out, is Republicans don't give a damn about the debt or the deficit. They truly do not care. I mean, remember back during the Bush administration, Dick Cheney famously said during an interview, deficits don't matter. And he's right, by the way. They really don't matter to a degree. We can quibble about the future impacts and about what it really means and our status and all that, yada, yada. But either way, in the short run, for packages like this, the deficit really doesn't matter. I mean, if it did, we wouldn't be spending more than $700 billion a year for the Pentagon, right? There's always money for the Pentagon. Nobody ever talks about that deficit. Oh God, $700 billion. Yeah, screw it. We'll give it to them every year. No, that's insane. Anybody who says they care about the debt or the deficit cannot support that overblown military budget that we've got. Yet they all do, so none of them actually care about it. They spend like crazy when they're in power, and they bitch about the spending when they're not in power. I mean, people had been predicting shortly after the 2020 election back in November that, okay, can't wait to see all the Republicans suddenly becoming deficit hawks, and it happened because it's predictable. Because Republicans do this every time. They go out there, they whine about the debt, they whine about the deficit. The average American has no idea what those things even are. Let's be honest about that. They do not know what they actually are, but they're told they need to be afraid of it, so they become afraid of it. They put Republicans back in power, and then boom, deficit spending goes off the charts again. It's just the way American politics works, folks. Pay attention, because apparently it's all just an endless cycle of repetition at this point. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, share, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel for fresh content 7 days a week.